This is a position that every school should have. And in all honesty, it's more than a little embarrassing that we don't. My children are older. I don't have children in the lower schools. However, as an Easton taxpayer who understands the value that strong, well and appropriately funded schools bring to our town, I fully support the increase. Any further cuts would have a detrimental effect on educational quality in difficult and unprecedented times. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Andy, Paul, Wendy, Art, Greg, I have Ira and Mike on the list too, and Jackie. Thank you for putting this together. I have some other remarks, but I just wanted to say that I think, for David and everyone to have this meeting in public, in person, was a really important first step for our town to take. And thank you to everybody who is on the technical side, was on the publicity side of this, setting up chairs and making copies. I don't think that the number of people here tonight is a representation of how people feel about our town or our school system. I think there is still lingering fear about health consequences potentially of gathering, and people are exhausted. People are tired. That was mentioned by some who we spoke about, the fact that there aren't that many people here this evening. I think it's actually even more important, that we take this as a sign that we need to dig deep and do right by our families and by our kids. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'm really glad to see you all here, safe and healthy, and doing what you do for Easton. It's really, really good to see you, but I have to admit, with all the time that's passed and all that has happened, it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day. Before the hearing, the BOE and superintendent prepare a thoughtful, responsible, collaborative budget. This year is absolutely no exception. They present it, answer questions, and then pray like heck that it's still recognizable when all is said and done. We've been lucky. For a while, the BOE was able to present you with budgets that largely absorbed contractual increases before you ever saw the requested increase. But we just can't do that anymore. The number of students isn't dropping, mandates keep coming from the state, special education costs continue to put enormous pressure on the budget, and well, the world has kind of fallen apart around our kids. The 18-19 and 19-20 cuts were damaging. The losses are apparent and are still apparent and deeply felt. The only thing shielding us from the full weight of the impact is a global pandemic that has made things like having a middle school without a fully functioning media center seem not so awful. Let me say that again, a middle school in 2021 without a certified trained faculty member to run it. We're criticized for not having more technology opportunities for students, for not having a better math program in the middle school, but the truth is we can't keep all of our basic positions filled with the percentage increases of the past 2 years. I know what some will say, and I respect the distinction, but we're all equally responsible for the outcomes that the budget cuts force into play. The BOE has the difficult task of deciding what stays and what goes, but that's the direct result of the apportionment of the budget passed back to them. The BOE clings to class size because that is our beacon. In the absence of system-wide technology management, curriculum coordinators, media center staff, extracurricular activities, gifted programs, funds for teacher training, and needed capital repairs, it's our greatest selling point. When I look at this year's budget and wonder how bad the cut will be, I fear that might even be in jeopardy. My ask tonight is that you help every parent and community member riddled with anxiety, with months of anxiety, wanting healing and recovery for their kids and our school families. Your votes on Thursday can send our children back to school next year after the most challenging year and a half of their little lives with every opportunity they need to grow and learn and move forward. Please do right by our kids. Our town is in great standing. Tax collections were better than expected. The grand list is slowly rising. Homes are selling above asking price, and our rainy day fund is above recommended levels. Let's keep it positive and honor the social contract with every existing new family that invested in Easton with the promise of an excellent education for their kids. Thanks so much for listening, and thank you again to everyone who came out tonight to participate.
Jenny, could you state your name? Sorry, we didn't get it at the beginning. Sorry. Thank you.
Jenny Cheetah, 60 Wildwood Road.
Thank you, Jenny, so much.
I'm Dory Volan from 8 Cedar Hill Lane. I'd just like to thank everybody for all the time you guys put into this project, and want to remind you that don't forget the silent majority. We all support education, we all know that, but the silent majority is there too, some of them may not be able to pay everything. Thank you.
Nikki Caldawi again, Staples Road. John, thank you for the very concise information. It's very much appreciated. We know this time of year is never easy, and we know that the Board of Finance, Board of Ed do countless hours of work on this. But this year especially has been difficult for everyone. I'm not just saying the people with family, it's for everyone in town. It's been difficult. But for the future of our town and seeing what these children can become, we need stuff reinstated. We're not asking for a lot of things that haven't been in our school before. We're asking for most of this stuff to be brought back in. And some of these things that were taken out, I pleaded to not take a teacher out 2 years ago, because we knew we would be back here again. When you take out one teacher, it becomes a revolving door every year for one grade. It happened to be my youngest son's grade. Every year, he has a new teacher in their team because the year ahead of them was the smallest and they were the biggest. So they had 4 teachers and then they needed 5. The last 2 years, they've had new teachers learning a new curriculum, a new team learning to work with different people. And it matters. It all matters. And coming off of a pandemic year, when we're talking about things that are pretty reasonable here, a social worker, a middle school in general, could use 5 social workers with that age group. But obviously that's not gonna happen. But to put these things back in, not only does our town deserve this, for all the new people moving in and the people who have been here and the people who don't have kids in the school who still care about our kids. This is about bringing stuff back, but it's also about allowing us to take a deep breath. Not just the people in this town, but the teachers and the staff members who come into this school every day, double masked right now, doing anything for our kids. I think our town deserves it, our kids deserve it, and these teachers deserve this. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Closer. Yes. Jackie Kaufman, alternate member of the Board of Finance, 44 Mile Common. Just wanted the record to reflect that we have received, I believe, 19 letters of support for the Board of Education budget that was proposed. I know people are not coming for the reasons that were just stated, for public health safety reasons. So I wanted the community to know that we have received those. Thank you.
Okay, next, Todd Johnson will go over the Region 9 budget. Before you start, though, Todd, because otherwise this huge crowd will fight to get out of the parking lot in a hurry afterwards. I think to the point Jenny made, I hope that a lot of the reason why a lot of people aren't here is because for the first time ever, these presentations were made available to people so that they didn't have to see it for the first time when they walked in this room. So I think a fair number of people who might have had questions didn't feel the need to come because they had seen the information that they would have gotten if they had come here. And as you say, I'm sure there are some people who are worried about the possibility of being in a crowd. So hopefully they've been able to gain something from the information they've heard tonight, from the comments from members of the public. One thing, before Todd gets up here too, that we did not touch on, either John or myself, is the federal stimulus money. We've been advised that we should be getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million for the town side and 440 some odd thousand for the Board of Education. What we don't have is any clear guidelines on what we can use it for. We know a couple of things that we've been told we can't use it for. We can't use it for pensions. We can't use it to reduce taxes. Now, that's a pretty nebulous concept because money is fungible. So if you use it over here and don't, it reduces the amount you might have otherwise spent. Is that a tax reduction? I mean, this is the kind of confusion that we're going to be faced with. So not knowing what's there, our practice has been, and I think we'd be crazy not to follow it, is until we have the rules and until we have the money in hand, I don't think any of us are going to commit it to any particular purpose. It would be nice if we could use it for capital like the EMS building, but we don't know. So hopefully we'll have better guidance before we end up having to set the mill rate and finalize the budget. But that's why there's nothing in any of these presentations that reflects that. With that, Todd? All set?
All right, so I'll be brief here for the Region 9 Board of Education budget. Just before we get started, would like to thank Dr. Harrison, Dr. Pearson-Hugo, who's over there, and Dr. Harrison is as well, Mr. Zachary, Dr. Pinn, and the administration, Joe Barlow. Also, all right, thank you. And also I'd like to thank the Region 9 board members, Cheryl Graziano, Mike Agostino, Julia Berry, Gwen Denny, Mary Lee Pompel, Karen O'Brien, and Maureen Williams. So as Andy mentioned, the Region 9 Board of Education is its own finance board, and we did pass our budget on March 16th, which is a 1% increase from the previous year's operational budget for a total of $24,595,255 for this upcoming school year. And as also mentioned, the allocations that happen are based on the student enrollment from October 1st of this past year. And the enrollment numbers, as you can see there, have increased for Easton, 9 additional students to 395. And on the Reading side, decreased 39 students to 420. And so that's why you see the big shift between the allocations and the budget change, with Reading being down 553,000 and Easton being up 780,000 or 97,000, even though we do have a 1% budget increase. We did look at our budget and tried to restore things as best as we could back to fall of 2021 before COVID times, and I'll go through some of those restorations here at the end. And if necessary, again, we don't know what's still happening through the fall, and if we have further cuts and reductions due to COVID, we'll try to put those back into the budget. All right, so to the next page. So our budget includes some reductions in our overall insurance based on Brown & Brown's projections. They're the insurance estimator that we use, and we decreased several $100,000 there based on our outstanding healthcare claims that we've had that have been fairly low over the last few years, and thought we could go a little bit lower there. We're also increasing our world languages due to a new state requirement for graduation for the class of 2023, where they need to have world language credits. So we're increasing one section each for 2 teachers that are already existing full-time teachers. So one class section in Spanish, one in French, and then 2 class sections for 1 teacher for Latin and etymology. We also have an increase in our special education tuition, which I'll go through on the next page. We're also increasing our electricity estimate due to expected rate increases as we looked at our consumption. And we're also planning a capital project over the summer for air conditioning, HVAC, for the gymnasium and the cafeteria, which are 2 large spaces that will need to cool. So we're expecting a bigger draw there. The other item that is a reinstatement is for a mid-shift custodian to bring us up to 7 custodians. So a few years ago, as part of our budget decreases, we cut some custodial staff, and then lo and behold, we had COVID and really needed the extra custodians. So not very good planning on our part, so we need to bring them back to help with the extra cleaning that's happening to get the students through the lunch periods, where we have 2 different dining areas set up in multiple lunch periods, and expect to have that in the fall as well. We're also including a full-time social worker for our Bridges program. We are basically borrowing 2 people right now from the general education, 1 social worker and 1 psychologist, and we need to return them back into the general education group to help the students next year and bring in a full-time new social worker into the Bridges program. So overall, this budget's going to get us to about 515 class sections courses, and we'll have about 20 courses with average class size of 15 or fewer, and those are primarily in the AP or advanced courses or modified courses that we have that smaller amount of enrollment. We did have some discussion around the school resource officer and potentially changing that out to an SSO, and we decided to leave the SRO position as is. And then we also have the Region 9 portion of the central office budget, which also has the Director of Technology in it. So you flip to the next page. So for our special education portion of the budget, it is increasing again. We're up to $5,815,000. $650,000 of that is an increase, and it's primarily for the number of individual education program students that we have now, which will be up to 139. And some of the services that we need to provide at the high school level. So there was a change in legislation that requires us to provide services for students until their 22nd birthday, which increased from their 21st birthday, so we have an extra year. We also have to provide transition programs to those students, and we don't have a program in place for 18 to 20-year-olds. And then we also have some outplacements, and those increases. And we're budgeting some increases for the outplacements coming in for some new students as well as the existing students. So again, special ed is a big portion of our budget. So overall, over the last 3 years, our budgets have been between a negative 0.4% to a 1%. And you can see the changes, as Andy mentioned earlier, historically in the last few years. Reading has had a decrease in students, and Easton, the student number has increased, which is a good thing for us, but unfortunately impacts us on the budget line with the allocation that happens. And so you can see the total numbers again down there and the variations over the years. One other thing I'll mention is last year we were fortunate that we had a very large budget surplus and were able to return over $1 million to the towns. We're not expecting that this year. We've expended more of our funds than we usually have. We're estimating right now around up to about $250,000, and we're still obviously keeping an eye on that as our expenses come in through the end of the year. And then again, as Region 9, we can take the money to put into our pension, into our capital reserve, into our health insurance reserve, or return money to the towns. And we'll always look to return monies to the town if we can. But I just wanted to let everyone know it's going to be far smaller than the number that it was last year, unfortunately. And then to the next page. So again, just to show some of the things that this budget will be able to return our students to normal here in the upcoming year. We are going back to fully funding all of our extracurricular activities. We had those in the budgets for sports and the extracurricular, the arts and the plays and everything, and unfortunately they didn't happen, but we are funding those and hope to have all those events back starting this year and have a graduation ceremony and a play and some other things, and then continue that next year in the fall with everything fully restored. We also, as I mentioned, will have the full-time social worker and the SRO. Again, with the changing requirements, we'll have the educational requirements in world languages met. And other items on here, we're also providing some funding for our diversity and inclusion program at Region 9 for some consultant services. And I think I've hit most of the others on here, so I won't repeat those. But again, we're trying to get things back to normal, just like the other Easton and Reading boards of education we're doing to get everything restored back as much as we can, plus provide some extra services where we can in technology and services and social emotional well-being. And that is it. So I will, oh, sorry, one more slide. Our process. The Region 9 process varies a little bit from the town process. Again, we've already approved our budget, so there'll be no changes to it. And we have our district hearing on the 5th of April, and then we'll have our district meeting on the 3rd, and then we'll go to the town referendum the same time that the towns do, which I think is around the 4th of May right now, for machine vote on the budget. And that's it. So any questions? All right.
Just in case anyone is confused about Todd's remark about the Region 9 having their public hearing or district hearing on the budget, because they are their own Board of Finance, tonight is for information purposes, but this does not qualify as the public hearing on the budget for Region 9 as in the same way it does for the local Easton Board of Ed and the town departments. So they have a somewhat more extended process than we do. So again, if anyone has any other comments, questions on any part of any of the three budgets, please feel free. If not, thank you all for attending, and thank you, John and Todd, for your presentations. And I hope it was useful to everyone and to the people who tuned in on the various platforms who aren't in the building tonight. Again, thank you, and the hearing is adjourned.